It's time for Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla. Stay tuned for insights, impact, and inspiration right here on Channel Africa. Available on the Channel Africa app.
And it is 2100 hours. A very good evening to you. A warm welcome. This is Africa World Hour on Channel Africa, the African perspective. And that certainly is what we bring to you here on Africa World Hour. Developments across the continent and beyond, the faces, the voices and the perspectives that matter. And we bring you an update on all the stories of interest to you and those, of course, you don't know about. That's the mission. We honor to bring some enlightenment, information, analysis that is prescient, all the details you need to know about what's happening in and around your world. Let's first start with the news headlines.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
Now we start with this. Calls are mounting for a full investigation into South Africans who have become entangled in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. The South African Police Service has confirmed that the Directorate for Priority Crimes Unit, the Hawks, are now probing allegations that the country's former president, Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duduzilia Zuma Sambudla, played a role in recruiting young men to join the fighting. The Institute for Security Studies Senior Training Coordinator Willem Els has this to say.
Now, we must just understand that those actions have been criminalized by our legislation, so that is why it warrants an investigation. We see also that the severity of the case is reflected by the CATS unit, that is the Crimes Against the State unit of the DPCI, that is actually investigating it because of the expertise of the South Africans after the previous dispensation. So that prompted the drafting and the promulgation of this legislation that actually prevents South Africans from being recruited. Secondly, it prevents them from participating in another country's war, but also in other armed groups.
Britain's Office for National Statistics says that net migration to the UK dropped sharply by nearly 80%. The numbers show a 204,000 decrease in the year to June, a drop from 649,000 in the year to June last year. The office has attributed the fall to fewer non-EU nationals coming to work and study in the UK. The BBC's Daniel Sanford has those details.
Figures that the Migration Observatory like to use, showing work visas down 70% and study visas down 67%. So those measures, which were largely brought in actually by the Conservative government, really restricting the numbers of people who can, for example, arrive with dependents for study and narrowing down the numbers of people who can come here to work.
The chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, delivered a firm message to the European Union declaring that Africa is not for sale. Yusuf told delegates at the recently concluded AU-EU Luanda summit that the continent is moving beyond its traditional role as a raw material supplier and is positioning itself as a full player in the global value chains. He urged Europe to support African-led mineral transformation, lift tariff and non-tariff barriers, and pursue trade partnerships built on balance and mutual respect.
We are calling for a more balanced trade partnerships. I'm pleading for European investments in the transformation process of our minerals on the continent. I'm calling for the lifting of any tariff or non-tariff barrier hampering the access of African products to the European market.
Meanwhile, the chairperson of the AU also called for fairer partnerships between Africa and Europe. President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said the European investment model in Africa stands apart from others.
Other investors might follow a different playbook by building factories, whether in Africa or in Europe, but staff them with foreign workers. They drill, they mine, and they take the profits away. They often leave a legacy of unsustainable debts. This is not Europe's model. When we invest in the local processing of raw materials in Namibia or Zambia, when we build pharmaceutical industries from Senegal to Rwanda, When we bring data cables to the Maghreb and East Africa, these investments are truly in our mutual interest.
And Pope Leo has embarked on first foreign trip as the Roman Catholic Pontiff. He is going first to Turkey, where he is due to meet the Patriarch of Constantinople. This is to mark the anniversary of a major council of the early church 1,700 years ago in what was then called Nicaea. And the Pope will go to Lebanon. The BBC's Alim Makbul has those details.
Visits to both of these countries had originally been planned by the late Pope Francis, but the overarching theme is one Pope Leo has certainly focused on: building bridges. First, in Turkey, leaders of different Christian traditions will gather to mark an ancient council that took place there. But the Pope will also visit the Blue Mosque and have interfaith meetings. Then Lebanon, where the Vatican says plans haven't changed following the Israeli airstrikes in Beirut earlier in the week. He'll meet more faith leaders and hear from young people there, giving a boost in particular to the estimated third of the country that's Christian.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
And it brings the time to 7 minutes past 9. In the civil rights organisation AfriForum says the ongoing diplomatic crisis between South Africa and the United States is deeply concerning and is warning that the fallout is not in the best interest of anyone in the country. This follows US President Donald Trump announcing that Pretoria will be excluded from the 2026 G20 summit, a dramatic diplomatic move that risks undermining multilateral cooperation and South Africa's global standing. Trump justified the decision on the grounds of alleged human rights abuses against white South Africans, accusations which have sparked outrage in Pretoria, with officials rejecting the claims as false and insulting. We're joined now by Kali Kriel, the CEO of AfriForum, to talk to us. A very good evening to you, Mr. Kriel, and thank you for speaking to us.
Good evening to you, ma'am. You're welcome to call me Kali, and it's great speaking to you.
So then let's just first start with the sum total of the press release that you put out, essentially putting blame on the African National Congress. What exactly was the purpose of that statement? What message were you communicating?
Well, I think the message is that there are issues that need to be addressed. The situation won't be solved by simply denying the problems that exist or simply saying that it's a result of misinformation. So we really want the situation to be solved, and to do so, we must look at what are reasons that you get these kind of statements from President Trump. Those words that he uses is of course very strong, but to try and counter those kind of statements, then just address the issues. If there is an issue with regard to farm murders, then I think an easy place to start is just for the President of South Africa to condemn the Kill the Boer chant that calls for ethnic violence, and then also have a look at, for instance, Section 12.3 of the Expropriation Act, which creates uncertainty with regard to property rights. And of course, the US, they're vocal about it, but we know also investors from other countries are not that vocal, but they will not invest if that happens. So those issues need to be addressed. And we want to help find solutions. And our statement was, let's look at the real issues and make sure that we solve them. We don't have to be the lapdog of the US or the lapdog of China. We have to act in what is in the interest of the South African people.
Okay.
And that also means that you try to have the best possible relationship with all parties in the interest of your own people. And
So
unfortunately,
let me jump
we are
in and
failing.
ask this question, Kali. Is it,
Yes.
are you objecting to South Africa as a government, and there are many South Africans who have called it a misinformation campaign and who've spoken out about it, against it, especially the labeling of what AfriForum has been communicating to the US, and whether it's your words or the extrapolation of the US. But the bottom line is the term white genocide is easily being bandied about. And you say perhaps the important thing is for South Africa to do something about it. Is South Africa not doing anything about it? Because for the first time we saw the South African government taking the unprecedented step of releasing racial breakdown of farm murder victims. And according to those figures, between January and March 2025, there were 6 murders on farms, down from 12 during the same period, with 1 victim being white. So is it not important to reflect the reality on the ground for the sake of South Africa, brand South Africa, and that's for all South Africans?
Yes, most definitely. We have to reflect the reality. It's not the reality to selectively just use a month or two. AfriForum has a report with regard to farm murders, a very credible report over the last few years. The fact is, farm murders have indeed come down. And the major reason for that is because the police are failing. We had to set up our own community safety structures that within the rule of law and within the framework of the law, communities protect themselves. People spend a lot of money on farm safety. So we are happy about that.
Okay.
And the term white genocide, we've never used. What we've said, and we continue to say it, South Africa has a huge crime problem, and there are certain categories of crime that are proportionately, the numbers are larger, not in numbers specifically, but if you look at you normally work it out, there are less farmers, so then you work out proportionality. Gang violence is disproportional. Violence against women and children is disproportional. Farm murders are disproportional. So in those cases, what we've seen with gang violence as well as violence against women, it is declared a priority crime, not because it's more important, but you need a specific strategy.
So do you want the killing of white farmers to be declared a national disaster?
No, not well, rhino poaching is a priority crime. Gang violence is a priority crime. We've never used the term white farmers. We said farm murders should also be a priority crime.
But where does the narrative then come from, Kali? Because let's go back to what you mentioned. You say AfriForum has done its own studies. So as per your figures, in the financial year of 2023 to 2024, you recorded 49 farm murders, and that represents 0.2% of the 27,621 murders nationwide. And the narrative, which keeps on being pushed by President Donald Trump to impose sanctions on South Africa, you have heard now how he is going to push South Africa out of the multilateral space by not inviting them to the G20 2026. It is based on the argument that white people in this country are being exacted to violent crime, particularly farm workers. But you yourself are saying that crime is across the board. Is it not then your responsibility as AfriForum, who's gone to the United States to raise the issue of farm killings, particularly of white farmers, to say, please correct your narrative?
No, well, we've also in our discussions with the US said we don't use the term genocide. What we do say is that 49 is disproportionately high. You know, one can say if the 49 journalists are killed, one would say, well, it's just a few with regard to all the killings. But because the pool of journalists are much smaller, that would be disproportionate. Our stance has always been, and that might be the problem, that you have the kill the boer, kill the farmer chant. That's a call for violence based on ethnic grounds against Afrikaners. If somebody in the US hears that, and they see that the president of South Africa does not condemn that, then it creates certain perceptions. So the best way to counter the use of hyperboles and this kind of language is just condemn this. Make sure that you treat it the same way as any other crime that needs a specific strategy. And if you just simply do that, you will be able to make it impossible for people exaggerating.
So you are projecting that President Cyril Ramaphosa does not care, something that you yourselves have put into the arena of the criminal justice system. You have taken the matter to court. Our judiciary has made rulings on this. But I'll take you to some of what has even been argued by academics and scholars, that the argument that South Africans, white South Africans are pushing that the South African police service and the president doesn't care about their killings, that why shouldn't you then address rural crime through economic integration rather than promoting divisive genocide narratives? Statistics in the South African government.
Who's promoting the divisive genocide narrative? You said we're doing it. I just told you we've never done it.
No. You should have listened to me clearly, Kali. I said
the fact that why don't you do it rather than promoting the divisive genocide?
Yes. I didn't say genocide. Kali, listen to me very properly. I said to you are saying that South African president doesn't care about the killings of white farmers. And I'm quoting to you an article by Stephen Friedman, who says...
Where did I say that? Sorry. I didn't say he doesn't care about...
You said that.
I never used the term white farmers. Yeah. I never used the term white farmers in any of our campaigns. Never.
Not
Tell
white
me
farmers.
Where I said it.
But no,
you quote me on something
you're busy
I never said.
You're busy changing goalposts. 1 minute you say genocide, and now you're saying white farmers.
I would
admit you did not mention white farmers. No, please listen carefully, Kali, and do not put words in my mouth.
Also, that's the same with me, because that's what you would do.
You did not say white farmers. I am quoting to you an article. So if we listen to each other carefully, we might actually get somewhere. How about that? Shall we have a constructive discussion now?
Yeah.
Good. So now he is saying, and I think it's a fair point, that rather than addressing divisive politics, why not address the issue of rural integration, particularly economically, because we do know that there have been incidents against farm workers, black farm workers, who's also been denied their human rights in some cases. So why don't you get involved in part of the problem, which also leads to crimes?
Yes, I agree with you that we should take on the divisive politics. And that is exactly why we oppose the kill the boer, kill the farmer chant. Why we oppose the fact that the president does not want to condemn that. In terms of the stance with regard to other rural crime...
But just to be clear, so you are busy talking about kill the boer, kill the farmer. Is it not a contradiction in terms? Because on the one hand, you are resolute that President Cyril Ramaphosa must focus on that particular sloganism. But yet, on the other hand, you say, no, we actually want to deal with the wider... problem of crime. So which one is it? Which one are you prioritizing? Because you seem to be emphasizing on the issue of President Ramaphosa must come out and condemn the sloganism on kill the boer, kill the farmer. Because that then you are focusing on one demographic.
You said that we should take on the vice of politics, and that is the vice of politics that I'm taking on. If you go and look at what happens on farms, these cases, not many of them that you mentioned, we've condemned every one of them. Garinel, I just spoke to him the week. He's from our private prosecution unit. He's representing a black farmer whose son was shot, and the police didn't do their job. So there's no way that we are divisive in this way. If you go and have a look at our projects, just a few weeks ago, we were involved in the forming of a cultural community network. As part of that, over the past few years already, we have agreements with the Baralong-Buseleka community, the Amabele community, and numerous others, where in rural communities we have joint projects. We have an indigenous goat stud. we have winter wheat, we have vegetable gardens. That is what we are doing in rural areas. So Professor Friedman should also take note of that. That is what we are doing. We're saying we should promote mutual recognition and respect on grassroots level from all sides. Then, of course, Afrikaners should condemn any infringement of human rights on anybody. But at least we can expect people to also condemn it if there are chants calling for the killing. And I have 4 children. I can tell you, one might now have an academic argument, but for them to hear the chant, it's hurtful and it creates fear in the minds of children. And that is what is angering us. And if we take on that, then it would be hard for any person abroad to make these kind of harsh statements.
So are you going to the United States officials to say, rather than focusing on one group, one race, why don't you help South Africa or help us to deal with the shocking violence, which you say is disproportionate to certain groups? And if we break down those crime statistics, there certainly you will find one group that is suffering disproportionately in one form of crime or another. You said it yourself. So are you saying to them, can you be a little bit more holistic? Because don't you think that the US behavior is divisive as well in terms of multilateralism?
No, we want to be more holistic. It would be hard for the US, for instance, not to recognize that farm murders are different, not more important, but it's the only category of crime in the country where there are people openly calling for the killing of people, and where that is not condemned by the president, not condemned by the courts. The torturing we are seeing with regard to these crimes are disproportionate. Just the day before yesterday, somebody was stabbed 79 times. A few weeks ago, a female, boiling water was thrown over her. There are examples of blow torches being used, electric drills being used to drill holes in an elderly woman's feet. Recognize those things. And then we say, then there should be cooperation between the communities and the police in rural areas, and that includes everybody. Our community safety projects in Elliot, for instance, the Taxi Association forms part of it. So our solution is not a one community solution. We are going to speak out about chants such as Kill the Boer. But then, of course, our plan should include everybody, and that is exactly what we are doing. But you see,
Kali, you keep doing the same thing. You keep on going to those phrases of kill the Boer, that must be prioritized. Are you going to go to President Donald Trump and say to him, don't you think that your misinformation campaign needs to cease? Because if you are doing it in our name, if you're doing it to help us, that you need to stick to the facts. I mean, the US itself US government officials have put out information saying that they found no evidence. US Embassy putting out a cable in Washington, I think it was August 18 in 2018, saying that there has been no evidence that white farmers are being singled out. You engage with President Donald Trump. You're busy saying President Ramaphosa needs to stop defending, and I see no evidence of him defending it, but you say he must condemn the phrase kill the Boer, kill the farmer. Are you going to go to President Donald Trump, whom you engage with, and say, stop spreading misinformation about South Africa?
Well, we have said to the US, we don't believe this is a genocide.
Are you going to tell him to stop?
Well, as long as Julius Malema is chanting kill the Boer, kill the farmer, you will have that kind of people outside having a huge problem, and it would lead to those kind of perceptions. That is why we say the best way to stop.
But this is the point that I'm making. You
then have to make sure
you are playing both sides, Kali. You are saying no, we're not exclusionary. We believe in tackling, but you keep on bringing up the same face, and you keep on pointing the finger at President Cyril Ramaphosa. But yet you refuse to take up the same responsibility with President Donald Trump. Why are you being divisive.
This is the president of this country is my president. I cannot prescribe to somebody else. The
But you go
president
and
of
talk to
this
him. You sit
country
there and
has a
you
responsibility
sit there and you
towards
have
the
meetings with him
citizens
about
of
what he must
South
do in South Africa.
And if President Ramaphosa has a responsibility, this is the issue. I'm going to continue to repeat. Kill the boer, kill the farmer. That's the elephant in the room.
And I'm going to
that's the
continue to
elephant in the
repeat,
room
Kali, that you
is-
are not being
Yeah,
absolutely
you are
100%.
interrupting
There
me.
are
You
some
want- okay, let me
white
listen. You
farmer
do the
refugees
interview.
that are going to the United States, and they are going there under the guise that they are being persecuted in South Africa. So you say you cannot talk to President Donald Trump, but President Donald Trump has spoken to you about this matter, and that's why he's changed refugee laws to allow white farmers there. I'm asking you a very simple question. Do you not think you bear that responsibility to speak to him? You're saying, no, but he's not my president. But you are in conversation with him. White farmers or white families are leaving South Africa because of that misinformation.
You finished because you interrupted me when I was still making my point. So finish your point.
I'm listening.
No, you weren't listening. I was speaking and you interrupted me.
Are you going
Can I
to
have
are
a
you going
chance
to
now?
speak now? Are you going to speak now, Kali?
Well, if you give me a chance,
I'm quiet and I'm listening. Kali, let's have a constructive conversation. You may speak,
Yes,
please.
please. So don't interrupt me, then it can be constructive.
Don't speak to me like that.
Please don't interrupt me. That's all I'm asking.
We don't have time. Are you going to finish your point, sir?
Oh, no, thank you so much. Now, the fact is, we've said we don't believe Afrikaners should go. We came to the fore already in the beginning of February saying we are going nowhere. So that is our point, and we also tell that to the US.
All right. Thank you very much for your candor and speaking to
Okay.
us. Kali Kriel, he is with AfriForum. It's a civic organization that's come out saying that South Africa, it is no good for the country, the manner in which it is handling matters with the US. And this, of course, on the back of the statement by US President Donald Trump, who has said that South Africa, Pretoria, will be excluded from the 2026 G20 summit because of its handling of what he says of white genocide, the persecution of white people in the country.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. 1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And it is 28 minutes past 9. We continue with news on Africa. This time we look at the economy. Ghana in itself, it continues to show signs of strengthening as the Bank of Ghana cuts its policy rate by 350 basis points, bringing it down to 18.0%. The move marks one of the largest single reductions in recent history, made possible by rapidly falling inflation, improved reserves, and a stabilizing currency. Dimakatso Lushuru has those details.
Inflation has dropped from 23.5% in January to 8%, its lowest level since July 2021. The bank attributes this to tight monetary policy, fiscal consolidation, and better food supply. But with inflation now within the target band, the focus has shifted to lowering lending rates to grow private sector activity. Governor Johnson Asiyama reaffirmed a commitment to driving lending rates lower.
I am on record to have said that by the end of my tenure, I would want to see lending rates at 10%. I've said it, I still stand by it. We are doing everything we can to make sure we achieve that by the end of our tenure. If you look at the data, you are looking at a movement from around 32% down to 21% currently. The banks have what they call the reference rate, the general reference rate. Some of them are even lending below that currently. And gradually, as interest on T-bills and others continue to trend down, banks will have no choice than to do aggressive lending.
With growth gaining momentum and confidence surveys improving, the bank expects economic activity to continue strengthening, but risks remain, particularly Ghana's vulnerability to swings in global commodity prices. Asiama told the media at a press briefing that as a commodity exporting country, external shocks can quickly spill over into the domestic economy.
We are basically another commodity exporting country. Remember, what do we export? 3 items: oil, cocoa, gold. And most of it we export as primary products. When you are a country like that, you are always exposed to external shocks. If the US dollar strengthens for any reason, and if anything happens there that has nothing to do with Ghana, and the dollar strengthens, that would have, a very significant impact on us down here. And so my worry is that we tackle some of these, call them vulnerabilities. We are doing our part by building adequate reserves. That's one of the things you can do. But I would want to see more of structural, programs. And I see some of that in the budget, which is very good. Can we do more and more processing, right? More value addition, to the items that we export.
This push towards structural transformation includes greater refining of gold, more domestic processing of oil, and exploring cocoa processing outside Ghana to capture more global value. The governor hinted that these priorities will be pursued aggressively in partnership with the Finance Ministry. Asiama also addressed concerns about Ghana's gold for reserve operations, clarifying misconceptions.
So remember, Gold Board is just the PMNC as we used to have it, right? So it's our relationship to get, vis-a-vis the Gold Board. It's just like the relationship we had with PMNC. What we do is to ask Gold Board to purchase something for us, and then that something is exported. When it's exported, we receive the US dollar. So it's not as though we are funding them. It is a service they are producing for us. And come to think of it, we take money from the commercial banks, right? From the commercial banks. And that is exactly what we pass on to the Gold Board, which they use to, acquire the Dory gold. It is exported. We take custody of the FX, and then the same FX is intermediated. So it is not as some people are putting it. In any case, remember, we are under the fund program. We are still under the fund program. The zero financing condition we are holding, very, very strictly. There's been no violations. If there was any violation, the IMF would have raised, concerns immediately. So we are not funding the Gold Board. They are, providing a service for us. And I'm sure that explains the question.
As reserves strengthen, now covering nearly 5 months of imports, the bank hopes to maintain stability against potential shocks, such as commodity price swings, US dollar strengthening, or unexpected capital flow reversals. For Channel Africa News in Johannesburg, I'm Dimakatso Leshoro.
It is now 27 minutes to 10. Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has declared a nationwide security emergency in response to escalating violence, kidnappings and militant attacks across several states. Under the new decree, the Nigeria Police Force will recruit an additional 20,000 officers, bringing the total intended recruitment for this year to 50,000 new officers. The government also authorized the use of a National Youth Service Corps camps as temporary training depots to fast-track the induction of recruits. Let's speak now to Dr. Jimam La, conflict and security expert from the University of Jos in Nigeria, to speak about these developments. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. La.
Good evening, and thanks for having me. Good evening. Thank you.
So can you just share with us your thoughts about this decree made by the president And what is at the core of it in terms of what the Nigerian security architecture is at the moment and what is being envisioned with these changes?
So why these changes? First and foremost, I think in the last few weeks, two key developments have occurred. First, as you will recall, President Trump's statement designating Nigeria as a country of particular concern around issues of allegations of genocide against Christians. I think and then after that, the security situation in Nigeria has further deteriorated. We've had kidnaps of school children. We've had attacks in different parts of the country, and I think the president is trying to show his hand, trying to respond to these developments. So if you look at it from the surface, you could say that it may be a good thing, but the problem is that, of course, withdrawing police personnel from VIPs, that could be commended, but this idea of mass recruitment will not necessarily solve the problem. I think you would also note that as part of this decree, this executive order, the presidency has also banned open grazing. Now, this issue has been on the burner of government policy for a very long time, but I'm not sure government has exhausted its engagement with the pastoralists, and so to come out and just ban open grazing with an executive order, I'm concerned. I'm really concerned, and I hope the pastoralists would go to court rather than responding with other means. So,
and that's exactly what I'm thinking, that other means that you're speaking about, because we have seen the pastoralists in conflict with other landowners in other provinces, other states there in Nigeria. So would that not exacerbate the situation? Because as you say, it is actually a lot more complex than a personnel matter.
Yes. This executive order just banning open grazing, it's really a matter of concern. A lot of my colleagues, those in the security agencies, but also colleagues in the academia, as like myself, we've tried to compare notes, and nobody has seen this as a positive development. Maybe there are some communities of farmers or groups who have been affected who will see it as long overdue, but it's complex, as you say, and it needed much more engagement, So, but I just hope that the leaders of the pastoralist groups would take the option of going to court and contesting this in court. That's just what we hope, rather than resolving to their own means. But mass recruitment alone will not solve all the problems. There's a lot of this idea that is our security architecture fit for purpose. It's a long-standing debate. We're one of the few federal countries in the world that has a centralized police force. This issue and debate about state police, the president has said he's given the National Assembly the go-ahead to develop a bill that can introduce state police. What kind of state police are we talking about? Has the presidency or has the security agencies improved upon intelligence gathering? Most of these kidnaps that are reported, was the intelligence around it? Not just intelligence gathering by the security agencies, but sharing of intelligence amongst themselves, coherence, synergy, So there are so many other issues that need immediate attention. Recruitment of more security personnel is not a bad thing, but it has to go along with other institutional reform that has to go along with that.
And that's the thing, the whole issue of a single security emergency, that approach, is it not simply oversimplifying the different conflicts that exist there, the banditry in the northwest, Boko Haram's ISWAP in the northeast, farmer-herder clashes, secessionist movements, urban crime? Is that going to be a single bullet to deal with all of this insecurity?
You ask a very critical question. The violence in Nigeria is multi-layered, is very, very diverse. It's a cocktail of various issues, regional issues, sub-regional issues, and it needs the active involvement of the state governments in these different regions. Whatever the federal government might be doing, they need to have the state governments need to bring more to the table. The president recently set up a committee, for example, to investigate and present a report on how to revamp police training institutions. So, for example, the gaps in police training, but also refresher training, very, very critical. Now we have to wait and see how that pans out. But it's all of these other issues. The role of the state governments is there needs to be more engagement, more active involvement of the state governments in these different regions. So I absolutely agree. You look at particularly northern Nigeria, the northeast, northwest, and then north central. Each has its particular unique violent theaters, and the issues are not the same. So while additional personnel will help the security agents, but there are several other issues, contextual but also national, institutional, that need to be addressed.
And what about just also the source of the armed conflicts, the insecurity, because it relies on different systems, ecosystems, the banditry, especially in terms of the kidnapping, looking for ransom. It has become an ecosystem in its own right, and there's resource trafficking that occurs, and there's political sponsorship, because we have spoken about the alliances between criminals and political elites. So how does that play into the matrix? Is there an idea that President Tinubu has outlined on dealing with the root causes of some of these armed conflicts?
Well, if you look at the historical and structural failures of the Nigerian state in terms of economic issues, political issues, the issues of social justice, the issues of attending to the concerns of the masses of Nigeria. Most Nigerians, when there are reports about improvements in economic plan or policy, as long as they don't feel it personally, they don't see how these changes impact them. So you have a lot of people who are disenchanted, who are not happy, who are basically available. And let me tell you, you know, we used to joke, but it's a very serious matter that the most dangerous Nigerian is the Nigerian politician out of power, and therefore where there are such available tools, the political stakes are very high. I say this with a very high sense of responsibility. So yes, when violence and conflicts and crisis is exacerbated, the investigations need to go deep, not just who are involved, who manifestly are involved, but who are the powers, who are the people who are pulling the strings of the puppets, as it were. So yeah, these are. I wish I could come on air and tell you that this decree, this statement by the president, this executive order is going to go a long way in resolving the issues.
Okay.
But
and then just a quick,
I'm not convinced.
Just
yes.
a quick final question. If you could just be brief in your response, because there is the issue of the deployment then of the soldiers, police and forest guards entering the civilian spaces. Is this not going to be seen as a militarization of internal security?
Well, we are there already. In a lot of the parts of Nigeria, there's virtually very, very few Nigerian states where you don't have a task force, whether it's multi-agency or the military. You have task forces all over. So we like, for example, in Jos where I live, we've been living with a military task force for over 20 years now.
Wow.
They've cut down on personnel as the metropolitan crisis has improved, situation has improved, as the rural one is the one of major concern now around my area, but the task force is still here for over 20 years. So this militarization of internal security, we're already there. It's about how do we reverse it? How do we get the police more involved? Now, these are the issues. These are the critical issues that we need to attend to.
We thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Your thoughts, Dr. Jimam Alar, for sharing them. A conflict and security expert from the University of Jos in Nigeria.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
Qu'est-ce qui vous a amené à dire ça? Est-ce que vous avez observé un certain nombre d'événements dans la vie? Est-ce que c'était par rapport à une expérience? Est-ce que vous avez rencontré des choses qui vous ont dit il faut de la patience, comme ça les choses vont venir au bon moment et les bons dieux pourra peut-être me visiter?
Oui, c'était justement un conseil que le Seigneur m'a fait inspirer pour donner à son peuple, parce qu'il y a la plupart des gens, pendant que Dieu bénit les autres, ils pensent que Dieu les a oubliés, et pendant que Dieu ouvre pour les autres, ils pensent que peut-être Dieu n'a pas pu écouter leurs prières. Alors, ce n'est pas le cas. Alors, Dieu bénit tout un chacun de nous avec son temps. Donc, le temps de Dieu est toujours le meilleur dans la vie de tout un chacun de nous.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
And we wrap up with our 2140 feature, and we talk about, in a world where creativity is often celebrated, but the emotional cost behind it remains hidden. A powerful new documentary is pulling the curtain on that. Filmmaker Sarah Chitambo Hatira has released her debut feature-length film, a poetic and deeply intimate exploration of mental health among Black creatives, both on the African continent and across the diaspora. Through personal stories, unspoken struggles, and long-standing cultural myths, the film confronts the stigma surrounding mental well-being in Black creative communities, while also shining a spotlight on healing, resilience, and the solutions emerging from within these spaces. So let's welcome Sarah Chitambo Hatira. A very good evening to you, and congratulations.
Thank you so much, Tsepiso. Good evening to you and your entire audience across our beautiful continent. Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure. It's been wonderful to watch you grow into these spaces that I know you're passionate about. So I want to start with the documentary. That journey of curating what you have put together, where it began, and what made you finally believe that this is the right moment for it.
Yeah, I mean, it began during lockdown. We lost my aunt, who's the first person I really can recall as someone who I could remember having issues with her mental health. And because it was lockdown, a lot of us couldn't go to the funeral. And again, it became this silence around, what she had lived with most of her adult life. And I started researching and found it very cathartic during that grieving process to be able to start to talk about it in the medium of film. So that's where the idea really sprouted from. And when I started really speaking to other people, I started to see that it's in a lot of my extended networks, that people themselves were struggling with these issues, but also in their families around the secrecy we have around not naming anything that's to do with mental health struggles. So that's really the genesis and where it began.
And it's actually also interesting, Sarah, how we as Black African communities have such creative ways of referring to or even characterizing mental health challenges.
Yeah, yeah. I think what came out when I started speaking to people is, when you do present with any symptoms that may be depression, that may be bipolar, that may be other things that are undiagnosed because we actually don't know, people will want to pray for you. People will want you to go to Uktwasa so that you can, appease the ancestors, that maybe that's what it could be. You might be bewitched, so it's never actually
a medical
what
condition,
it is.
a hormonal
No.
imbalance, or and then how did that influence how you dealt with this documentary? Because you've gone the non-traditional way, you've used poetry and a non-traditional structure.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I wanted to make it accessible. I wanted to make it, it's such a heavy topic to begin with. So how do we make it so that people are able to follow the narrative in a way that is a little bit more easier to absorb, right? So poetry is definitely one of the sort of motifs we used. We used a lot of music. It's a heavy soundtrack that's involved in the film, and we also have comedic skits by Ebenezer Dibakwane, who's a very well-known comedian. Unfortunately, he also succumbed to his mental health problems just earlier this year. So we try to use comedy, poetry, and music to try to not necessarily lighten the film, but to make the content more easier to absorb.
So that's interesting, Sarah, because that's what I was going to ask you next, that doing that, won't you be seen as making light of something that is obviously very difficult, and the subjects that you're dealing with, there's probably deep trauma behind the people who are talking about it.
Yeah.
So how do you
Yeah.
strike that balance?
Yeah, I think it was done in a very sensitive manner in terms of taking into account the nature of what we're talking about. But I think we knew that it was something that would be difficult for people to put their mind around, So it was more around making it accessible than trying to make light of it. So it's just a way in which to frame the narrative in a way that is embedded in popular culture, embedded in the way that we are consuming information at the moment. So sometimes in order to keep from crying, you have to laugh. I'm paraphrasing Miriam Makeba there. So yeah, I think we tried to do it in a very sensitive manner, but we really wanted it to have a wide audience and for people not to shut off.
And it's interesting that you should mention Mazimama Miriam Makeba. That is somebody who herself, those close to her would tell you that dealing with her on a daily basis could be anything but what you expect. And there were, intimations of serious mental health challenges there. And that takes me to this industry that we're in, creatives. I was reading an article about River Phoenix, Keanu Reeves. We do tend to be portrayed, especially if there are genius levels, as these tortured souls. But it's almost made to be something that is celebrated, in the sense that you can't be that great if you're not suffering from mental health.
Like a tortured soul in
Yes.
order to be creative, or in order to, create certain bodies of work. I think it's something, there's a sensitivity to people who are creative, I think. It might be almost innate to a lot of creatives that they are very cerebral. They do take in a lot of information, and that could be ways in which that you could, start having issues. But I think in our industry, it's something that's starting to be taken into consideration in terms of our creative pursuits. I know that the Black filmmakers, the Black Producers Collective, have something called Mind Matters now, which they are actually talking and workshopping with different creatives in the film and television industry in terms of just creating a lifeline for people who may be struggling, because I think even just in terms of the nature of the way the work is, it's seasonal. Not everyone always has the opportunities on a year-long basis. So that can also influence your mental health in terms of not having an income, not earning, not, you know what I mean? So I think this is something that's really important for us to be aware of in the creative industry, and I think there are ways in which help is starting to come forth now.
And that's what you reflect in the documentary, isn't it? It's not just about dealing with stigma, but you also talk about the solutions that are scalable at community level within the sector. Tell us a little bit more about what comes out of it.
Yeah, I think there's different ways in which we explore ways that people can get help. It's not going to be traditional ways. Not everyone is going to go see a therapist. People might want to go see an elder at a church. They might want to go see rather a traditional healer or a sangoma. So there's different ways in which people brought their own healing and are finding their own sort of solutions around it. We didn't want to be prescriptive in terms of following the Western, go to see a therapist, get put on medication, etc., because that doesn't work for everybody. So there's different ways that came out for different people, and some people was just the fact of creating, the fact of naming, the fact of releasing was a cathartic and a road to transcendence and a road to move on to the other side of being able to heal and move forward.
And just to end off, I know you as a proud Africanist, just in creating this work and wanting it to be accessible, and I'm sure it's because we mentioned that it's within the diaspora, there's that challenge of then appealing to everybody while showing what is quintessentially an African way of dealing with this matter, while having to deal with Western donors. Is that a challenge that you encountered, or that maybe creatives do have to deal with themselves?
Absolutely. I think there's different ways in which we have to reconcile and negotiate our Africanness. In a lot of the funding we receive, in a lot of the rooms that we enter, it's not always conventional to show up in your Africanness. So I think that there's a lot of ways in which we negotiated the story we had to tell. There's a lot of ways we had to go around certain things. But I think there were things that we fought for, and there were things that we wanted to come through so that it becomes a narrative that is authentic and that is not, again, someone else telling us how we should tell our story. So the things that my producer and I had to fight for in terms of, representing the African way of doing things. I mean, we have a psychologist who's also a sangoma, so she represents the African way of coming up with solutions, but also has the theoretical psychological training to back up what she's doing. So we really wanted to do that in a way of showcasing that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and I think it was really important for us to do that.
Sarah, thank you so much for speaking to us. Much appreciated. Sarah Chitambo Hitara, filmmaker, speaking to us about this film. So go to the Atlas Studios in Milk Park. It'll be screened there 30th November 2025 from 2:30 p.m. Brings us to the end of Africa World Hour this, am I right saying Thursday? I keep saying it's a Thursday, and it's it's like this mirage of the weekend is bothering me.
Tuesday, it's been Thursday.
Since Monday, it's been.
I'm so done, but yes, it is Thursday.
Thank goodness. Hey, anyway, Shailen Tukumana, what's on your African diaries?
What's your take on thrifting?
I think you just got to know the right spots.
Yeah.
I noticed it's quite a big thing in Europe.
It is. It is a big thing in Europe. It is a big thing in parts of Africa. However, the context is always different. Where in Europe and the Americas, it is celebrated. It is a stylistic choice. And in Africa, it's deemed as poverty. You don't have enough to buy the original, or for something that wasn't pre-loved, as people would mention. And so we're going to be talking about the culture of thrifting and why the African continent should hop onto this kind of, I want to say, I don't want to call it a fashion trend, but more so the option to style yourself. I think more often than not, Africans are plagued with this
notion of what style is based on what they're being given
from a particular country. It's not even the whole world. It's just one country's influence. That's the problem. And then in the second hour of the show, pens down parties. Last day of matric, you're writing your exams. This is the last time you are going to be together as a collective. However, from what once was exciting comes grim stories. We think of the Enyobeni tavern saga that happened in 2022. And so we see that in South Africa in particular, there are schools of thought that suggest that parents keep their children at home. But what does this then mean for that culture?
I think what I find so striking is that it's obviously so different to what we went through. And they're becoming bigger, bolder, and more extravagant. They travel now in groups across the province, and it's a rave, as they call it.
They think about these things. I think for me, what I want to gauge is we want to strip the child, young adult, if you will, of their decision-making capacity, right? And that's something I think that departments are not taking into account. What we're saying is protect the children, but how do you protect them but still allow them the opportunity to mingle and mix with their friends? Because I don't think that should fall away.
That shouldn't, but I think the thing is that the culture is now... Parents are parenting less, unfortunately, in some cases. So when you give a child the allowance money or card and go out, there needs to be greater monitoring, as you say, not restrictive in terms of socializing, healthy ways of socializing. I think that's what we need to focus on, because the things that are happening with this young generation,
they're more extravagant than some of us. Let's just be honest.
There's extravagance, but hey, this thing that you're spending 10,000 rand on a matric party.
Hey, I don't listen. Never in my whole entire life would that have ever been an option. Ever. Doesn't matter whether they're coffers or not. It would never. 10,000 rand
on a dress.
Oh my days.
And then you have to get a Porsche, a Lambo, Bentley,
of course,
helicopter. April might be this thing. Who came up with this thing?
The influences that be is the reality.
No. Anyway, so that's coming up on African Diaries this evening, and we'll surely be listening in. That's it from Africa World Hour. It's 3 minutes past 10, but you and I were talking, I get.
Definitely. Don't worry. We are within the show. We've already started.
We're pagati inside.
Exactly that.
All right. Thank you, Sheila. Good night.
Conversations that touch the heart and inspire change.